If you call the meeting to order.
So we'll call the meeting to order. We'll start with the, we have a member of the public here. I'm assuming you want to address the board, Mr. Pompier.
I was just here to...
Okay, I see you submitted a letter. So you don't have any comments or anything you want to...
Well, the letter speaks for itself. Okay. If you want me to just...
No, that's up to you. I'm just giving you an opportunity to...
All right, well, I'll just take the opportunity then. So basically the letter is requesting the town of Athens, and I copied the supervisor for the town of Osaki also. And I sent copies to the authority, I think it's called the authority budget office and controller. It's asking the town of Athens to reject the pilot proposal because I believe it's unnecessarily generous to the project. Basically, the towns are entitled to require a pilot equivalent to a full tax if the property was taxable. And that's what I think the town should do. The IDA is proposing a significant decrease. I think you guys have amended your findings recently, which I didn't get a chance to digest. So this letter is based on the findings that I think were done on September 15th.
Correct. The new one has been posted to our website, or the revised one is posted now.
So there were a couple of valuation methods that were basically not used. One was a NYSERDA preferred method, which would have valued the property, I think, at $46 million or something like that. And then apparently you hired your own consultant that valued it at, I think, $166 million. And if the towns were to require an equivalent full tax, they would get a lot more money. If you used your consultant's appraisal, I think you're talking about another $100 million plus over the course of 30 years. So I don't see why there's an incentive being provided to this project that already came here that didn't require incentive to select this site, that went through the state siting process, which, by the way, kind of sidelined the towns. The towns had no legal authority to affect the siting process other than maybe being participants in it, but their local zoning laws, et cetera, are completely superseded by the state law. So here we have a project that says we want to build here in Osaki and Athens, and then later ask for a tax break. And then you guys treat it as if you're providing them with an incentive in order to improve otherwise vacant land. Well, it's just the opposite. They came, they wanted to build. There's no need to incentivize them. And I think there's been a lack of due diligence, at least with respect to the towns. I don't know what due diligence you guys have done, but you have to understand completely what their finances are if you're going to take their word for it that the project is not viable without a tax credit. So I'm asking the towns to do that due diligence, which in my opinion means we got to see all of their internal financial analyses, see all of their finances, see what they're paying the landowners for. I think there's a couple properties where they're leasing it. See how much they're paying per acre. But basically find out whether it's true that the project is not viable without a tax break. And then if it is true, I think you should bring it right up to the point where it is viable. So that's basically it in a nutshell. And I don't think that IDA has authority to grant a tax exemption, because I don't think they have control over this property.
Well, we will. Whenever we do any of our pilots, we do a lease back. So that'll take care of that.
So you are going to take control?
No, we have not said anything about a final approval. So let's not have a debate here. We haven't granted our final resolution on it if and when the board considers it. Now, what was just said in here about the IDA not having the authority is just completely incorrect. We have a separate exemption authority for commercial projects under 412 of the general municipal law or 874. It's up to the board's discretion. 487 is a separate exemption available to the municipalities for solar projects, solar and wind. So there are two separate sections of the law.
But one requires control.
That is correct. We have not granted the exemption, and a condition precedent to the grant of the exemption by the IDA under 412 and 874 is supervision, jurisdiction, or control, which is taken through the lease-back process, which we have not approved, and it's subject to the board's approval.
So you would do a lease back to basically put the towns in the back seat.
Don't
So
put
they no longer would have the ability to require a full tax payment? Just because you would do the expediency of a lease back?
I'm not going to engage in this
No,
debate with this
Lee,
gentleman.
so-
You can't win it.
Have you heard back from the towns yet? Have you heard back from the town about
Not
this? Okay.
I didn't ask for them to reply back.
Well, the letter was sent to the town
That's right.
with their concerns, not the IDA. So-
Well, it was copied to you, so, you know.
Right, and it was after the comment period also. So we're entertaining the letter. We'll be responding to it in our packet.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
Anything
you.
else?
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, so we'll go into our regular meeting. We'll start with the reading, the approval of the minutes for our October 20th, 2022 meeting. I need a motion to.
I reviewed those and make a motion to.
I'll second.
Second, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And we will go on to finance report.
I have read and reviewed the cash flow statements, and I would make a motion to approve cash flow statements as presented.
Thank you. I need a second on that.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And I have read and reviewed the check detail statements as presented, and I would make a motion to approve the check detail statements as presented.
Need a second on that?
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so also under operating administration, I just want to re-entertain the idea of our role in housing projects. So at our last meeting, we had a couple local developers looking for incentives or how the IDA could assist with workforce or senior housing. We wouldn't do market rate. Now I have another entity asking, would we entertain doing housing incentives? Traditionally, the IDA has not done any housing incentives in the 20 years that I've been involved in the IDA. So I just need to get some direction from the board. If we want to do some more research, we could set up maybe a small committee.
Well, so I think since we got two requests, we probably should have some kind of committee or meeting to discuss how we're going to handle these requests. And do they say what they want as far as when they say incentives, or they?
Well, they're looking for a pilot, and one developer, could be sales tax and mortgage tax exemption.
Has there been a precedent with any other IDAs within the state? doing
South of
projects?
here, there's a couple that's all they do. It's just housing incentives.
Probably not a bad
Westchester.
idea to reach out to them and just see if we can see what their
Okay.
framework is, what they're doing.
Is there a specific reason we haven't done it in the past?
I don't think anyone ever brought it up. We've had some conversations about it.
Right,
There are other IDAs that do it under the rubric of commercial.
right.
Because there's one court case dealing with that, the word commercial, which is the operative term,
Yeah.
is ambiguous. So then it's up to us to define that, and that's if that's what we want to do. So,
Stems back to this COVID surge in Greene County of
Yeah. No, it's a big issue.
Lack of property.
Yeah.
I don't think if you have a housing, then I don't know how you're going to get employees, and I don't know how you're going to attract businesses. You got to have workforce. We found that.
Counties wrestled with this on the mountaintop, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we went through that with Ferguson,
Yeah.
There are many IDAs that do housing. A lot of it is in connection with tax credits.
Right.
And issue pilots. I've seen it all around. So yeah, it's just one of those things. We just have not had anyone really approaches with a serious project, we had, Ken Carney came to us and we kind of talked about it. It never got, because they never awarded the credits. I think it's kind of how the things fell apart. The credits were never granted, so therefore the projects never moved forward.
We've had to do two formal projects in the past with a developer, and in both cases, the applications didn't get approved for the tax credits, like Paul said, so they didn't move forward. But the focus was on strictly workforce housing, and as April had said, to avoid quote-unquote market rate housing, which is like free market rate.
Right.
And to focus on workforce. Now, regrettably, with the mindset in this county, as you know, the second project we tried to do on the American Valve site in the middle and reutilize that brownfield site. And as you know, the public,
Wasn't crazy.
a minority of the public chose to decide that workforce meant welfare.
Yeah.
Even though they both begin with W, I guess.
Right.
But if you look at the state's workforce model, it is clearly not intended for people who don't work. In fact, you have to have a job. You have to income qualify.
Right.
To even be in the apartments. And so we've danced with that before with a good, well-qualified developer. Subsequently, nobody's come forward because it's not something we're going to take the lead on putting together.
Right.
But now, if you know what's happened with the housing crisis, we had this conversation 2 months ago, and when I started doing this work, it was the people making $15 an hour that couldn't find a place to live.
Sure.
I know people now are making $70,000, $80,000 a year and are losing it and are finding a place to rent.
And there's nothing on the market either.
Look at Clemens, what Carver's up to.
Oh, yeah.
He's creating his own workforce.
But we have a
Yeah.
place there, it was a studio, and in 24 hours, I got 100 inquiries. I couldn't
100,
believe it, 100.
Wow.
I had to actually take the thing down because I was overwhelmed with so many incoming calls that we just,
Great. Yeah, it's definitely worth investigating.
Okay, so I can investigate with other IDAs. One of them, I think it's Suffolk County, they do a pilot for housing that's tied to development. So if you're bringing in 100 jobs and you want to do housing, you get a pilot for the housing portion, but it's tied to that. Whereas Westchester, they just do straight up housing. They also did a recent study that they're in need of 11,000 units to meet the market demand, 11,000. Whereas the people that we're talking to are looking at like 60 units and 40 units. And I have been in touch with Warren at the county of need and what direction they want to go in as well.
Has the county done any research on
Well,
the
Warren,
shortage or any
yeah,
numbers?
there's a report that Warren could pull the trigger on. I just don't know if they've gone that far to do it,
Yeah.
to actually do the study of our needs. But I can ask him about that as well.
Yeah.
It would strike me broadly that until the county kind of does its due diligence, this is not the area that we would necessarily lead on. Housing is kind of an intricate part of the fabric of everything, right? So as we've learned with Ferguson and as we've learned, with any other attraction. So it does strike me that they're in a better position to understand infrastructure and identify and target investments around that if they want to be able to promote, housing, et cetera. It's also, as we know from many other kinds of projects, this can be zoning issues in the municipality. So there's an area in my mind for the county to lead here. First by identifying not just the need, but the kind of the gaps that fill that need, right? So that's just my observation.
Yeah, Maggie, they did a housing study, but it's really, really dated right now, especially given all the changes. So, that's a good suggestion, actually.
Okay, I'll talk to Warren about that. Okay. We can move on to project updates. You received the executive director report, so I'll just quickly go through. New Athens Generating Company. We met with the county to discuss their application. We have a town meeting on the 22nd to see which direction they would like to go in. I know that Mike Crony has been meeting with the company directly, so we will give the board an update for our December meeting. Any questions on Athens Gen? Okay, Champlain Hudson, that's scheduled to close. I'm sorry, so Athens Gen meeting will be the 23rd. The closing for Champlain Hudson is scheduled for the 22nd. Any follow-up? We're good?
We're good.
Okay.
I'll check them all. No problem. Thank you.
Any questions on Champlain Hudson? Flint Mine Solar, we had the meetings. We just received the transcripts, so we'll be reviewing those. Council, I will be posting them, and I have all the letters for the comment period, crafting our responses now. So we'll be sending that out to the board for review. The board did receive the draft revised finding statement. So by our December board meeting, we'll have recommendations, updates, and responses for everybody to review.
Okay.
Any questions on Flint Mine? Okay.
And just, do you have a scope, April, as to how many letters we received?
26,
Okay.
27, 28, 29, 30, about 30.
Separate from the Sleepy Hollow.
Oh, yeah, separate from the original Sleepy Hollow before the public comment period. Those letters came in. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Then moving on to battery storage. So we are still reviewing contracts, lease agreements. Paul's staff is reviewing. Then that company, the battery storage company, is doing their due diligence. They were over at the site last week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Lee.
Bye, Lee.
So
The Hudson in Carroll, there was a Benny Buell's property, wasn't there? Just maybe unrelated, but there was some space out there being looked at? Right?
Yep, and that project is essentially on hold. They got the planning board approval. They're going, right now what they're doing is they're going through the interconnect process, through the study, and they had told us a while ago that that was potentially a 24-month process. I would say that project is a real flip of the coin. It all depended on, there were some major transformer upgrades that are required at that substation. Central Hudson's basically going to try to push them off on a battery storage guy. The battery storage guys we can't absorb this cost. So that negotiation was still going on. We've heard nothing from capture since.
Thanks, sorry.
What's involved in a battery storage business? I mean, in the sense of how does it impact the land? What does it involve? The building?
containers.
What they look like?
Like, okay, shipping container?
Yeah.
Yeah, we usually got ventilation systems on them and some other
Yeah.
things, but that's all they are, is line them all up.
Okay.
Access roads, some panels, some power lines in, power lines out.
Basically giant batteries that are storing excess power from the grid at certain times and then dumping it. I almost, they call them batteries, I almost consider them capacitors, and then they dump out at different times or actually off peak hours, actually when they're storing it.
Right.
And then they're dumping it out in high peak times.
So does that positively impact our electricity, or does it all go down to?
Anything that gets on the grid adds stability to it, you know.
Right, so it impacts broadly people.
Well, it impacts directly because, it's like a bathtub. I mean, you can't,
Right.
unlike the internet where I can send an IP address from here to Texas specifically.
Degrades.
Electricity is like, you pour it into the tub, you pour it out of the tub.
Oh, okay.
So when that battery discharges, the first person who's gonna use it's the street light right across the street, it's gonna go to the closest people.
Okay, it is. So that's a positive for the locations that have the battery storage.
Potential positives, grid stability and brownouts and other times like that, the ability for them to be able to bring that power on. And then second, from an environmental perspective, and it's way premature on this project to know this for a fact yet, but under environmental justice, Central Hudson's been decommissioning all of these little peaker generators they have. So I don't know if people realize that there's a generator over here. There's a turbine generator on this right over here. If you look, there's an oil tank, and it's in that concrete building. So, and these generators are old, okay? And so there's been a lot of noise in New York City about getting rid of these, but they're actually, Central Hudson's looking to basically replace them. So what happens now is when there's a demand need, that generator kicks on.
Right.
Vice versa, what happens, the battery would kick in.
Okay.
Versus the generator.
So then only negative would be an aesthetic thing, you know, which you can resolve.
Yeah, these are pretty easy to
landscaping.
screen. I mean, they're only
Yeah.
about 10 foot tall. They barely
There's
go
not
that height.
much, and it's a piece of land over there that's
Right.
not, you know. Just a quick point of interest, I just finished listening to a book and they go into a lot of different topics about distribution change, all that. They're talking about power and they talked about battery storage and needing to couple that with all the solar because obviously solar's not making power at night. But the statistic there was that if we were going to go all electric, you would need to triple your electricity output, triple. Not double, triple, almost a
Right.
threefold increase from what we have now. So you picture Athens generating, you need 2 more sitting there to make up the loss, or to
Right.
cover, actually the demand, not the
Cover
loss,
it,
the
increase
demand.
the projected demand.
Yeah. It skyrocket the electric demand.
So does that give us an opportunity?
Every vacant field in Greene County will have solar panels.
Well, I don't think you would ever meet in the short term, you couldn't meet the intended demand they have coming up on their timeline. Probably not possible.
California's a great example. I mean, they're having brownouts like on a regular basis. They're trying to switch to electric, but
You would triple your electricity demand.
Yeah.
So for us, it's a vacant piece of land, it's behind the town hall, it's right near Central Hudson, is that Central Hudson? And it would help with our performa for leased land.
Okay.
plug power to her, yes.
Which is also one of the reasons we're with the Athens generating, we're gonna be seeking to try to get a parcel back from the Athens generating as part of that process, because there's a nice 24-acre piece that would lend itself extremely well again for another back. So from our perspective, it's a growing demand. You know, we can sit here all day about what you try to attract.
No, it is what it
It's not
is,
a
yeah.
growing industry.
Right.
That's where
It's very much a growing industry. I'd probably get hung for saying this, but quite honestly, it adds taxable assessment, even with a pilot, it adds significantly more value contributed than what the vacant field does. And in this economy right now, currently, it doesn't create any long-term job demands on us. We can't even fill the jobs we have here.
a workforce demand.
Right, it does very low workforce demand, and it's all monitored remotely.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
I think that we discussed this very briefly several months ago. I do think at some point we may also want to think about modifying our applications, particularly as we think about development at exit 21 on either side, to better understand how those entities are accessing power. Right, we know that natural gas, et cetera, but to this bigger issue, Donna, I mean, there are lots, in places where the sun is far more prevalent, homeowners now, the systems come with built-in battery storage units, essentially, so they literally can be off the grid. Certain business models, are just built around that, that they really are their own little power unit, if you will.
Got it?
Yeah, so long story short, I don't see absolutely any downside to it.
Yeah, it seems like,
It allows use of marginal lands, clearly they'll need to be incentivized. If you look at the way they make money, they basically make money 3 places. They make direct market money, which means that they bought electricity at 6.42 cents a kilowatt hour last night. And today they're selling at 6.44 cents a kilowatt. I mean, we're literally talking hundreds of cents difference.
Right.
What they're buying and selling at. So that's the smallest part of it. But then there's fees that are paid through NYSERDA, incentive fees. And then there's also, believe it or not, there's standby fees. Part of that charge you see on your Central Hudson bills circles back through to NYSERDA that comes back, and they're paid these. It's a demand fee. I apologize, I'm slipping my mind this morning, but they're actually paid to be there.
On
Right.
standby.
On standby.
Right,
And
okay.
those 2 pots are much bigger than the actual market, direct economy, kind of direct commercialization side of things. This would never work on just that alone.
so theoretically, it also put us in a better position for attracting, businesses that have high electricity usage, or is that pushing it?
No.
Yeah, okay.
No, and I mean, you could,
Because it won't make power cheaper.
it's such a small facility that
Yeah,
You know, if you're one of these people who like to sell everything, you know, stretch your stuff as far as you can, maybe. But in this case, I'd be hard-faced and tell somebody like, oh, this is a good place to come because we have grid stability because we have this battery here.
Yeah.
So you're not gonna have a brownout or a shutdown. It's just not big enough that you could make that kind of guarantee to a company.
Right, okay.
Moving on to parks, so exit 21 East, Paul is reviewing the contract with our hotel. Delaware is still coordinating with Stewart's and Windsor. We're looking at putting out bids late winter.
Late winter, early spring is more likely, but
Okay,
we're pushing Delaware right now to get on, to keep on the ball. The other thing with Windsor Southern is they've asked in the draft contract and for a little bit more time. You know, we were looking to really push them on breaking ground this summer, opening in 2024. Yeah, 24. And then we're really looking now at probably stretching that out 1 year. Okay, so that came back in the contract. I ran it by Sean and then with the county, they said they were fine with it. And I think it's more, as much as I think they very honestly want to break ground as quickly as they can. But I also understand the fact that when interest rates go from 5 to 7% in 2 weeks, you know, and they're up and down and with the variability right now, just don't forget, we have a reverter language in this so that they don't buy that parcel and then not do it, walk away, and we lose control. So given there's a reverter in there, there's some increased risk to them. So I don't think it's unreasonable to give them just a little bit longer time frame. Frankly, it probably also would help take a little bit of the strain off the coordination of all three projects, infrastructure road at once. Hopefully they're gonna go this summer, but the contract as written will give them a little more leeway to be constructing by 2024 and open by 2025. But, you know, that's the way the contract is today.
okay. So Santos is working on the final maps for the subdivision. The town and our consultant are working on zoning changes. And then we met with the county and the architect for the tourism center. So that is underway. We're moving on with design process, so. Any questions on East?
No.
The building that's getting demoed, the old one,
Yeah,
we're gonna try to, is that movable in any way or salvageable or?
I don't think so. It's older than you think. And it's really bizarre. So it's really bizarrely built the way it's on wings and stuff like that. If you look, I guess you can move anything, but where, for what? And yeah, that's just it. Where, what would you use it for? Why? That's gonna have a need for.
Workforce housing.
I'm dragging down to the field.
Yeah.
we are gonna try to take some of the landscaping maybe and move it across, some of the
So there'll be a
shrubs,
salvage.
stalks, things like that, some salvage.
No, they built it for that.
Oh, they went to the tourism center?
Yeah. So the Stewart's that's right across the street, though, we were looking at that from the tourism center. Looking at
Is there any additional bells and whistles that'll be in this new tourism center? Or just, what? Exactly, for our guests. Little bar,
So-
where they pull off the road.
A local, yeah. A local beer champagne.
Well, as you're coming around and you're seeing it,
Yeah.
it'll be more of a more welcome visitor center. My understanding is the layout, you'll have the open space with all the brochures and
Okay.
public bathrooms.
And they are talking about trying to have a little place where they could have like some local products.
Okay,
or
that's
something
what I
like
sort
that.
of wondered.
And then the one thing.
Yeah. No, exactly.
Talk about a little meeting area in there.
No, that's
We
what
have
I've
talked
been
about
pushing
it,
for
yeah.
years, and we are,
I think that's a really good
Yeah,
idea.
20-person conference room.
it won't be that big, but it'll be,
This size, yeah.
yeah, enough that, because it's really it's a pain in the neck sometimes to get people to meet in Catskill, like go to the county, like even here, we don't have limited space for parking. So this
Yeah.
will give us a place where the county, the idea, we can all meet with people or, you know, as they come in and it's a nice location.
Yeah,
Guys
especially
can
as
get
we're
off the thruway, go to meeting, get back on the thruway.
attempting to develop exit 21 West, we can have meetings there.
So actually, the next step is that I'm working on now, and that is I'm trying to get hold of Home Depot owners there to see whether we can get some more land base from them. Because there's some they're tight, the Stewart's lot is tight.
Yeah.
3 or 4 of the parking spots are actually on the Home Depot property. And so that's the little magic I'm trying to.
Do they, Renee, do they actually own their buildings or do they lease them from somebody?
It's through HD Realty Corp, and I'm still trying to track that down, to be honest with you.
How many visitors does that center get a year?
Did you say like 50,000 or
Something
something?
like that. Because
Really?
It's more than
Yeah.
you think.
Probably.
This is- they're very busy.
Spots you're trying to get?
Whatever we can.
Yeah,
I don't know.
whatever you can fit
Well,
in.
yeah, we're just not that far yet.
But we were talking about a pavilion, things like that, and then a place where they can take in their brochures. So a dock or a shed.
Welcome center.
It won't say pavilion on it though. I already put my foot down. That was my only thing at the meeting. That's all I cared about. Okay. So that's exit 21 East. Exit 21 West, Columbia Memorial Hospital still has a option in place until January 6th. We're still waiting to see what their final decisions are. Haven't really heard much from them. As we pointed out, they're waiting on maybe a grant that they
Yeah,
applied
there's
for.
this transformative, I think it's called the Transformative Healthcare Grant, and they're an applicant on that. Everybody expected the awards were gonna be announced before the election, which didn't happen though. But if that grant doesn't happen, then the project clearly is not gonna move forward.
And then the county has retained CPL engineers. So right now we're in the process of working on the primary access road. Some estimates for
So you
that.
understand the county's still interested in wanting some land from us in the back.
Yeah.
And that, we haven't had that conversation. Well, yes.
Is it clear what their purpose is for that
That doesn't
land?
have dollars.
I'm sorry, wait.
Dollars on it.
Repeat that, Maggie?
I was curious, have they clarified what their intended use for the property is, the county?
Yes, it's gonna be a general,
Healthcare.
they're gonna put their Department of Health, their mental health services, their general health, Department of Health, and then they're gonna also have, let's call it flex space, but they're gonna have sort of space that is available, so if there's a pandemic or something, or needs to be, vaccine clinics or something like that, that they would be able to do that there in a separate location than any other county offices. But it'd be primarily the county health department and the mental health department will move there.
Yeah, because that's scattered all over the place.
Well, mental health, mental health's in Caro. They were out there, since I worked out there in
Right.
'89, they were there, and that building, I can't tell you how many times that building's flooded.
They have, but some of the therapists are, on Main Street?
In Jefferson.
Catskill, yeah, so, and they're kind of stuffed
Yes.
into different places and.
Yes, that, they are trying to consolidate that, but there will be some space allocation allowed for, again, if we have another pandemic.
Yeah, yeah.
Really, because they're planning on even having like high-end refrigeration and everything in this so that you don't run into the same problems again if there's vaccines and things that have to be handled and managed. So they're looking full suite of services sort of thing in there. They would have those zero freezers or whatever they call them, deep freeze. So.
And that's it on exit 21 West. Are there any other questions on any other projects? You good? Okay, we can
So we can.
make a motion,
We'll
You can.
close the meeting out. I need a motion to
adjourn.
adjourn.
I'll make a motion there to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Why don't you leave, see if Maggie didn't want to stay on, but turn off the live.